Good morning, everybody. I'm Chip Halleck, President of the Newark Regional Business Partnership, and we're thrilled that you all joined us here this morning for this webinar. We hope that you'll check the NRBP calendar for other events that are coming up in the very near future. This, as you know, otherwise you wouldn't be tuning in, this webinar will feature insight from the travel, hospitality, entertainment, and small business leaders who are hopefully emerging from this year-long pandemic nightmare. We're very pleased to be collaborating with the Greater Newark Convention and Visitors Bureau and acknowledge the leadership of Ricardo Salazar and the support of Megan Black, who worked with the NRBP team, including Maya Curry and Barbara Kaufman on today's program. Certainly collaboration is the key word, as NRBP worked with partners more than 15 years ago to begin the formation of a CVB that would play a leading role in attracting business and leisure visitors while energizing Newark residents and advocates around the features that make Newark such a great place to live, work, and play. Now funded as a tourism improvement district with an assessment on hotel room nights sold, the CVB is an asset for the city and for those who work in travel and visitor-related enterprises. I've been pleased to be on the board of the CVB since its formation, and now I'm very privileged to introduce a fellow GNCVB board member and very dedicated elected official, Central Ward Councilwoman LaMonica McIver, for a brief welcome and remarks about this resilient city. Councilwoman.
Thank you so much, Chip. Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All righty. My video looks a little frozen, but hopefully that comes up. I'm not sure why my video decided to get frozen at this particular point. Is it frozen on your end? No? Okay, good. All right, then it's just me then. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NRBP's pandemic recovery session. I'm so excited, of course, to be here. As Chip mentioned, I am a proud board member of the Greater Newark Visitors Bureau, and I'm excited about all of the conversations and the work that we are looking forward to as we continue to dig ourselves out of COVID-19. It has been a tremendous and difficult, to say the least, time this past year, and we're currently working through it. And I know many businesses who are on the line, and even some of the phenomenal businesses and partners that are going to be speaking on the panel definitely know all about it firsthand. I do want to first thank the NRBP, as well as you, Chip, as well as the businesses that are listening for their participation and assistance through many different avenues during this pandemic. I mean, businesses have been helping out by preparing food and such. And so we are definitely thankful for those businesses that have been helping and definitely, truly working here in the city of Newark to bring us all together. Everyone's been rolling up their sleeves and doing the best that we can do, during this time, to all work together. And that's truly what this is all about. We have a mayor that has a true vision in us rolling up our sleeves and working all together and doing all that we can to kind of get through it. And we've been demonstrating exactly that. And so I just want to thank you all who are on the line, and definitely to the organization for everything that they've been doing. However, here we are getting there, we are pushing through, and we are almost, we can see a little light at the end of the tunnel now, right? And probably some of us can see a bigger light, some of us can see a little smaller one, but the point is some of us can see a light somewhere. And so we're excited about pushing forward. I think that this session is amazing as we talk about the pandemic recovery and what that looks like, what Newark looks like, as we move forward in the entire Newark, but specifically our businesses, our community, the travel, the entertainment. What does that look like for us? So I'm really looking forward to today's panel and definitely looking forward to the great conversations. We're doing a lot on different ends when we're working with different organizations and businesses to talk about how do we really populate, the taking advantage of the spring and summertime coming up to really get our city back on track and have some type of focus, on us moving forward and bringing some life and economy back to the city. And so definitely looking forward to the session. And so I will not hold you long. I am not the one with all of the information, and you have a wonderful panel in the front of you who is going to, deliver some great remarks and definitely have a great conversation. So with that being said, Chip, I will close my remarks and definitely turn it back over to you. Thank you all for being in attendance today, and definitely thank you for all that you do for your piece in making Newark great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you too for your leadership and working with Mayor Baraka, who's been such a rock and just a terrific leader during these challenging times. So with that, we will jump right into our agenda that includes 4 presentations that I'll introduce as we transition from one to the next. And following the presentations on the hotel industry data, travel news, Newark Airport updates, and overview of the New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism's outlook, Ricardo Salazar will lead a discussion with representative of our arts, entertainment, and hospitality organizations, and then NRBP's Barbara Kaufman will conclude the program. We have a very packed agenda. We'll try to address a couple questions. Feel free to put those questions in the Q&A box. We are tight for time, given the talent that we have before us today. We will try to get to a couple questions if time allows. So with that, am very pleased to introduce our first presenter, and we're going to learn a lot about the hotel market here with some terrific data from Veronica Andrews of STR. Veronica, please take it away.
Can we move to the next slide, and then we'll jump right into the agenda. Thank you. I thought what we would do is open with an overview of the U.S. industry and be able to benchmark historical and current trends for Newark. As Councilwoman McIver mentioned, it's been a long haul over this last year, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm happy to share that from the hospitality perspective. And finally, we'll wrap up with a forecast and STR's long-range outlook for the remainder of this year and next. So we'll move on. And before we begin, I'd like to make sure that we've laid some groundwork here. First, considering Newark is the center of the universe, even as the crow flies, there's a lot of competition out there. Each of the pins on this map here represent a hotel. And we're going to dive in here to your local market. So let's go to the next slide and see that this is the CoStar and STR market as it's defined on a map, with on the right, all commercial real estate. On the left here, the hospitality or hotels each marked. And you can see that there are 2 submarkets in the Newark market. Suffice it to say that the Newark Union County submarket, including the airport, is the submarket that drives the entire market's performance. There's a tremendous alignment with the results and the growth year over year, week over week in this submarket compared to the market. So again, we'll be speaking to the whole market, but know that it is inclusive of all of the 2 submarkets. So if we go to the next slide, there's one more thing I'd like to do before we begin, and that's just make sure we all understand the raw data that we deal with. Supply would be the physical capacity of rooms available in the market. The demand or the number of hotel rooms sold. Revenue would be that revenue generated by the rooms sold. Occupancy is a function of the 75 rooms in this case divided by the 150 that were available. Average daily rate speaks to the rooms revenue divided by the number of rooms sold. RevPAR is the metric that levels the playing field in the industry. It simply is revenue per available room. For any hotel you're on the line, you know there's an easy shortcut here. One can always just multiply occupancy times average rate, and they'll get that RevPAR performance. Again, the metric that defines success in the industry. So without further ado, let's go ahead next. And we're going to move through our performance trends. For the US, in the month of February, what I'm presenting here are some of those key performance metrics. You can see revenue per available room at approaching 50% decline over February last year. February last year, the very onset of the pandemic. Average daily rate at nearly 25% speaks to the entire industry. I do want to point out that as a whole, whether we're looking at upper tier hotels or lower tier hotels, as a whole, throughout the year each month, the average rates have been in that 20th percentile drop over what we would normally see. The biggest hits taken in the luxury and upper upscale arena, lesser so in the economy to mid-scale type hotels. Now, transient revenue per available room down 34% is speaking to the individual travelers, and therein lies our first steps toward recovery. It's the leisure traveler who is representing our growth in any positive movements. And that's what we expect to see in 2021, followed by individual business travel to be able to bring that back up to 2019 levels. Group, on the other hand, would be those that accommodate both our banquet space and overnight guest rooms. Here you can see it's tremendous drop. It's going to be further out, maybe the end of this year and certainly into next year and the following, where some of those larger group activities are happening. And even at that segment has evolved where there will be more virtual attendance at these meetings as opposed to overnight accommodations at the beginning of their recovery. The real story I want to point out is in that foundation of the building blocks we saw before, which is the room demand on the bottom left here. 67 million room nights less occupied than we had last year. Those are the heads and beds that you hear us talk about in the industry. But I also will point out the final point here in construction rooms. Suffice it to say that during this pandemic, there have been some upside potential, and there are 190,000 rooms across the US currently under construction in hotels that will be opening within these next 12 months. Let's go to the next slide and really hone in on Newark. So here's Newark's story for February. Here you can see I've also benchmarked against the entire US. So you can see our growth comparison for Newark compared to the total US. I want to focus there at the bottom where the 198,000 room deficit to February last year is really driving the bus here. It is really going to be growing those heads and beds, those rooms sold that are going to make this success for Newark and many other destinations. Let's move to the next slide. This is a run through the warehouse. I apologize for the speed here, but I will assure you that you will have a copy of this presentation as we will circulate that after the event. If we could move to the next slide, that would be terrific. The next slide will include a line graph. It's going to be the history of revenue per available room for the industry from January 1990 all the way through February of this year. Maya, is there any chance we could get to the next slide? I think we may have lost it. The story, when we bring it back, will have a story that tells you that we've had a 111-month run from 1990 right on to 9/11, where we first saw a significant drop we had never seen before. It took us 12 months to recover, and we enjoyed another 56 months before we had the recession that involved the housing and financial markets emergency that we had in the country. 18 months later, we started a run of over 115 months in a row. So over 9 years, we're looking at growth until the pandemic hit.
Veronica, excuse me for a minute. Obviously, Maya just called me. She's got a problem on her end with the presentation. So I apologize for the slides. She's trying to get it straightened out. Thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I wonder if I can share a screen. I cannot. Okay. Well, suffice it to say, then we are in unprecedented territory. I'm going to bring up a few more points and, of course, assure you that we are going to be sharing the insights here. There are about 10% of high-end hotels, that would be the luxury and upper upscale hotels, that are still temporarily closed. We have a map that can show you each month from April of last year right on through February of this year, where we've seen hotel closures. The number of rooms in the economy and the mid-scale, upper mid-scale arena are nominal. They are 1% and less, so that you can see that they were the driving force for people to be able to travel when they felt like traveling over this last year. Think of locations on interstates or in areas where people are comfortable traveling, where they have some space. They're going to be located in the beach locations, and they're going to be located in the mountains. But we are definitely on the road to recovery with hotels opening every week. We're getting more inventory back. A lot of that is driven by the protocols, by local restrictions on whether people can meet. Certainly the vaccine being rolled out and making people more comfortable traveling, paired with those restrictions loosening up, will be able to help with our recovery. There are
Veronica,
yeah.
Veronica, excuse me. What slide are you on? Maya is back. Her internet is back. So if you
Okay, I'll tell you what, if she could go to 17, and then what we're going to do is jump right ahead. I know that we have a time constraint here. If she could go to 17, there's just leisure demand and lockdowns by market, and I'd love to be able to show where Newark is in relation to other top markets in the country.
Okay, she can hear. She's working on it, and
So our
don't worry about the time. That's on us. Thank you.
Okay, so the top 25 markets are gateway cities. Yes, it's New York, San Francisco, LA, Chicago, Miami, but many other major markets throughout the country. Here's a list that would show you across the bottom where these cities are. Perhaps we have to hit enter, I'm not sure, but you'll bring in the bars here that show, here we go. Thank you, Maya. You can see where we've got definite leisure demand, that demand that is going to drive our success moving forward, really in our negative factors in places where we've never seen before. Take a look at New York there in the near center, and then the high purple, bright purple would be Newark, and then I've even added in there for an additional benchmark the total US. So you can see those top 25 markets, these major gateway cities, are really driving the overall US performance because we have so many that are in worse shape than the US average. So if we'll move forward, the pandemic brought a new way to look at data, and I'm just going to share this because it really is a good story. If we go to the next slide, you'll see where we have mapped every sub-market in the US. Remember, Newark had 2 sub-markets. Well, this particular one here puts together all of Newark, and you can see your high last summer of nearly 57% occupancy. We're resting right now at about 42%. This is weekly occupancy, every week. The markets that enjoyed the higher occupancies, particularly early on, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, certainly near to STR here in Tennessee, but more importantly, a place where people could go and still be outside. The Florida Keys and both coasts on Florida are enjoying very high occupancies and maintain that pretty much from the middle of last year right on through current. And then bringing up the laggards certainly would be Hawaii, and how we know even in the news how Hawaii has been impacted as they rely so heavily on the tourism market. And then of course Orlando is another place. Let's move forward because the real story is in demand, the number of rooms sold. And here I've mapped on the top where we were last year, that light color. And this is Newark's story of the number of rooms sold by month. And then the darker blue line would be the very last year, right? This is the 2020 as we come through. And you can see where we are narrowing the gap from January of this year to April. We're narrowing the gap. While last year was still down, that light blue line was still down, the darker blue line is approaching up. So it's a good story here. Let's go ahead and move forward into the forecast and take everyone through where we see the industry going. So if you could go on, thank you. Now, this recovery scenario here really relies on 2019 being the benchmark. 2019 was a banner year in the industry. And the 2 metrics that I feel will really tell the strongest story for us is demand, the number of rooms sold, so those people staying in hotels, and then the average daily rate, which has so much profit contribution for hoteliers. And you can see the long haul that we have. It's going to be 2023 before we're back to the number of rooms sold that we did in 2019 on that big growth spurt that we were enjoying. And certainly average rate is going to take much longer than that. In fact, if we go to the next slide, there's a few more insights that I can share. And in this case, you get the real picture year by year. the benchmark, if you will, rather than just comparing our growth to the same time last year, let's benchmark against 2019, that prior peak that we enjoyed. And here you can see that I've mapped out, it's 2023 before we have the number of rooms sold. In average rate, it's going to be 2024 or beyond before we get to the $131 average rate that we enjoyed as an industry in 2019. And certainly for revenue per available room, the metric that defined success for us was $87 in 2019. It was the highest ever, and we are looking at well beyond 2024 before we're back to that. So if we could allow any questions, I would make myself available after the webinar as well as throughout. And certainly if you wanted more information on this particular presentation, I will be forwarding a copy of this with additional data.
Veronica, thank you very much for really interesting data, certainly impactful, and thank you for the way you so seamlessly went through it despite our technical difficulties. So we're not going to stop for questions right now, but Veronica said she'd be very pleased to answer any questions later on that come up. And in our follow-up email, you will all receive a copy of Veronica's presentation, which she's making available to us. So Veronica, thank you very much. So with that, we'll transition to our next presentation, and we're very fortunate to have one of our strong partners here in Newark, United Airlines, represented by Pat Ryan, who's Director of Research Insights and Campaign Operations for United, and has a presentation about the insight that United's got into travel demand and passenger attitudes right now. So Pat, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Chip. I appreciate it, and thank you all for listening to these remarks today. Really do want to give everyone a picture of kind of what we're seeing out in the industry. To give people a quick baseline, my area and particularly the area that I think we're trying to leverage as we forecast where things are moving forward is surrounding research and analytics, and we're combining two major fronts in that. One is that we're using all of the data that we take in based on the actual behaviors people are taking, certainly the flights that are being booked, the loyalty choices that people are making, any kind of customer related information. And then we're also marrying that with really nonstop surveys, I guess is probably the way to say it. We reach out to both our own consumers or our own customers, as well as sort of the broader market to try to understand what is the lens of how the United travelers are thinking about things, and how does that marry up with the broader traveler segment, and what are they thinking about going forward. So we're using a large piece right here. I've kind of laid out some details, but overall, the goal is just understand how the market is moving. Given the size and scope of the airline, we do really have concerns in all areas nationally and even internationally. But Newark being one of our hubs is a really, really important benchmark for how we think that things are going to move going forward. So we can move on to the next slide. One of the things that we've done since the very beginning of the pandemic is to ask these broad survey groups, how worried are you about this virus? You can see in March 6th of 2020, at the very beginning, about 48% considered themselves either somewhat or very worried. And that quickly shot up within a week or two to a massive 77%. A level at which we sat at for pretty much all of 2020. But what I can say is there is certainly light at the end of the tunnel. If you'll look towards the far end as of March 19th, so that is just last week, this audience is saying it is down to 61%, which is still certainly a lot. But what I want to really draw attention to is that very worried section, an area that had been up in the ranges of about 40% last April. Now it's 16%. So I think the somewhat worried contingent, it's totally natural. Certainly, all of this is totally natural, of course. But I think that we would expect the somewhat worried to really extend until concerns about the virus start to fall dramatically. But what we're seeing is those who were, truly concerned and didn't want to leave their homes, really wanted to completely uproot their previous lives. That contingent is diminishing a little bit. I think, certainly surrounding the vaccine, and that is starting to lead to some really, interesting and important results as we're moving forward from the business angle. So on the next slide, we talk about how, or we've asked these people, okay, what is the difference maker for you wanting to return to travel, to return to whether it's business or leisure travel? What is important to you? And maybe it's not surprising to everybody, but overwhelmingly, 61% in their responses mention the vaccine. And as you'll notice in the second bar, many people also mentioned both doses, not feeling confident even after a single dose, knowing that many of the vaccine treatments require two, that it is critical for them to be thinking about travel again. Now, this certainly doesn't represent everybody, but it is clear that that is a major difference maker for people thinking about returning to this new normal that we expect to have going forward. And what I can say is, this is certainly an interesting key, and it helps validate kind of what we're seeing as the vaccination rates are going up. Business is starting to return, in definite form. A couple of other things that I will call out here too is for many people, even who are already vaccinated, we've seen responses that indicate some of the other bars on here. You notice that case counts, positivity rates, and then family members being vaccinated as well is a big piece. A reminder that in some cases there are not vaccine options for children available yet, and so we will continue to monitor that, as that certainly affects the thinking for most travelers out there in the market today. On the next slide, we do keep a close eye on the vaccination rates that are occurring throughout the country. Knowing that as these rates get higher, consumer confidence is likely to rise as well. It's really important for our forecasting to try to get insight into that traveler demand. So with the US aggregate at this moment at about 10% vaccination, that is certainly, it's good, not great. I think that we all know that there's an excitement about that moving forward. I think what's really interesting that I do want to call out on this particular slide is there are regional considerations. And in particular, so most of the lowest rates of vaccination are in states with higher populations, understanding that it's challenging to have enough doses for some of these states. And of course, with the New Jersey and New York area, that feeds so heavily into our Newark traveler base, this is really important to us as well. We also have hubs, a couple of them in California, in Texas, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., as well as Denver. And so these different shapes in different markets are really influencing what we're seeing in the demand space, and continues to be a major function, given what we saw in the previous slides, that the vaccine is the difference maker for most people thinking seriously about getting back to travel if they have so far been uncomfortable with that idea to this point. On the next slide. So I wanted to put in more details. I got a little bit of pushback here. So I've used some colors to indicate the overall rates of what we're seeing with travel returning over the last few weeks. What we see, what this lists here on this slide is green showing our maximum sort of return to travel rates, and the reddish colors for the ones that are returning slower. So you'll notice the Northeast and the West are returning a little bit slower than the rest of the country. The less populated states tend to be increasing at a higher rate. Florida, of course, being a big exception, especially with spring break time. We are seeing incredible demand to head to Florida from all over in the country. And so what we do expect to happen, and I'll say, this is coming out of these particular trends, is that in the spring break periods, people are in many cases going to some of their traditional locations more in the South, places like Arizona, obviously are high here, those kind of locations. And then in what we typically see in terms of general traveler demand is that the summertime starts to bring in some of the coastal areas, especially in the Northeast. And we do expect that to be a difference maker over the next couple of months because demand has been steadily increasing nearly every single week since 2021 started. We feel very good about where things are moving going forward. And this map starts to show where things are at this moment. But it does also make us encouraged because this is a similar structure to what we would typically see during this time, even in a healthy pre-COVID environment. So very, very encouraging in a way to see that there's something normal and semi-reliable that is popping up before us. On the next slide, we're showing those who are targeting Newark specifically as their destination. So unsurprisingly, we're not seeing as much coming straight out of the Northeast. Of course, people are so close by, but it is a little bit interesting that we are seeing a lot more of the bookings coming from these high populous southern warm weather states. So what we think that is leading to this, with California, Texas, and Florida being such hotbeds of it, is that the Newark area is a very different kind of experience, and from what they're typically getting, and a reminder that this is primarily what we're seeing these days is primarily leisure travel. Business travel is rebounding slower, and so when people are looking at leisure destinations, what we tend to find is they're typically looking at destinations that are dissimilar from where they're currently based. Florida, Texas, California. None of those are I would say, extremely similar to the Newark in New York area. And so what's really important when we're thinking about that is the travelers are going to tend to be out-of-towners focused on leisure-specific intentions, at least in the near term. And that can potentially shape, what we would expect in terms of the typical destinations that they might visit, the typical sort of activities that they may want to take at their destination. But people are going for fun, and that is really what's driving them at this moment. We see less demand coming from some of the smaller population states there. A few key things then I kind of want to make sure are really key and wrapped up in here, because I think that they're all really important takeaways for every single person here. Number one is that United, by the end of this month, is going to return to cash burn neutrality. So for those unfamiliar, although I think a lot of us are familiar these days, unfortunately, with cash burn, that is basically us losing money. And so we expect to hit sort of a break-even point on our core business by the end of the month. So that is a huge turnaround. I've put in a note as a reminder. This was out there in the market. It shouldn't be it's not hidden or anything like that. But in April of 2020, United's business was losing $100 million a day. And now we expect to be at zero, which is a tremendous turnaround through that period. We fully expect that to be a precursor or a trickle effect to many local businesses throughout the country. But I think especially in a market like Newark that has such a large airport supporting it and so many people who are interested in experiencing this kind of destination. The second piece is that it's been a steady build. We haven't seen explosive surges, which is actually really encouraging for us because it means that this is likely a more reliable forward-moving growth pattern. If we saw unusual spikes, there'd be a lot of reason to believe it could be based on fare sales or very particular types of shocks to the market. This is a slow building of confidence. And again, I think we see it especially related to vaccine rollout. And it does give us a lot of confidence that we're seeing true fixed recovery for the long term. The third piece I want to say is something I mentioned earlier. Business travel does remain lower demand. The proportion of leisure versus business is really probably some of the highest it's ever been at this moment. And we do expect that to continue at least through 2021 and potentially, well into 2022. The biggest thing that we're seeing is it does feel like the confidence that people are building up through leisure travel will need to be reestablished first for them to push their organizations in many cases to take on some of that business travel going forward. But that said, we do survey our business clients, or especially our travel manager partners and such, and there is pent-up demand for business. We just don't expect it to come back at quite the same rate that we're currently seeing with leisure. And then the fourth piece, and this is important for the Newark market area, but international piece is a big part of that hub. And we do see both, destinations and origins coming for the Newark area, particularly Europe, but also a number of other international destinations. There is a lot of demand both to enter the US and to exit, and we are very excited about that. However, there are structural issues in place that are keeping things down right now, less about fear or concern related to the virus and more about sort of national level protections. In many cases, most international regulating bodies are keeping quarantine levels up, or in some cases completely blocking entrance based on certain criteria to and from their countries. So that is something we are keeping a close eye on. International travel, especially with the Newark hub, is very important to United Airlines, and especially knowing that leisure segment is really important. At this moment, we do continue to keep a deep eye on that, but right now it is facing issues not really as much related to demand as to sort of structural barriers to enter. And that really wraps us up. I could go on for hours about this. I do want to keep it concise. And something I will say is I do have confirmation that we will be able to share this out. I know that Chip and Maya, I was kind of waiting on that, and we will be able to share out this presentation as well. So for anybody who is interested, please take a look, and I am available for follow-up questions. Thanks, everybody.
Pat, thank you very much. A lot of really terrific insight that you shared with us, and certainly is good news, and I think reinforces what a lot of us feel anecdotally and hear from colleagues every day. So thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being able to make the presentation available too. So we look forward to being able to have that available to everybody on the call today. So thanks again, Pat. With that, we will move to our next presentation. And although the number of employments may have been down over the last year in and out of Newark Liberty International Airport, there's certainly been a lot of activity there. And we're pleased to introduce Jim Gill, our next speaker. Jim is a member of the board of directors of the Newark Regional Business Partnership. And more importantly, he's the general manager of New Jersey airports for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And he'd like to bring us up to speed on some of the things that have been going on at the airport and some of the things that will be going on in the future at the airport. So Jim, please.
All right, thank you, Chip. Good morning, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit today about the things that are going on at Newark Liberty International Airport. Again, really a partnership, as was mentioned by the councilwoman and others, for helping the region move forward. Again, Jim Gill, I've been with the Port Authority a short bit of time, seems like a little over a year, and it seems like right after I joined, we hit some strenuous issues and difficult times. Just to give you a little bit of a background, in 2019, it was an unbelievable year for us, hitting new records, over 46 million passengers at Newark, over 11 million riders on the AirTrain system, and looking to really break some more records as we went through into 2020. And 2020 began really well. Then the bottom dropped out. As you can imagine, and as you all know, air travel and just tourism in general really took a hit. And COVID-19, fed us our lunch, and we had to deal with it. We were at one point down over 98% of traffic, but we do see some hope on the horizon, which is we talked about, was mentioned earlier, and we're looking forward to that. So what I will say is from a positive perspective, we're still looking at investing in some projects. We haven't lost sight of the fact that we have an airport to run, that we have a facility that we need to continue to upgrade, to serve our community, to serve our partners, the airlines and their customers. And the vision was there to move forward. So what I want to talk to you about today are several projects that many of you may be familiar with, and maybe one or two that you're not as familiar with. But number one, the new Terminal A, replacing our existing Terminal A, our replacement of our AirTrain system, and runway rehabilitation that will be starting really soon. So these projects that I'm going to mention have a value of about $4.5 billion, and they're all coming forward within a very short time frame. So really important to us, but just as important to our users and our community on customer service, updating our facilities, and doing a lot to take the region forward. Our goal and our mission and our vision for the Port Authority Aviation Department is to be a world-class operator, world-class airports. We say that often, and we say it repeatedly, not only to hold ourselves accountable to it, but to have our community hold us accountable to it. And this investment in our assets is a big piece of that. So we look at doing that through customer experience, improving the customer experience, investing in our assets, and being good partners with our community and our tenants. So it's governance. So as we talk about what Terminal A looks like, we have a number of pieces to the terminal that are really important to understand. Our existing Terminal A was built for 9 million passengers, and we well exceeded that in 2018, and even more so in 2019. Continues to have a range of operational struggles based upon the way it was laid out and the way things operate today, both with security, queuing, things of that nature. And from a position of a state of good repair, we need to reinvest in those facilities. We don't want them to fall into a state of disrepair or have a difficult time moving forward. So this project really involves a couple things. So I'm sorry, I'm going to slide my screen here a little bit. You see, if you can see my cursor on the screen there, this existing Terminal A. All of the satellites, the 3 satellites you see there, A1, A2, and A3, will be demolished to accommodate where the new Terminal A sits, which is over on the right-hand side. And it's going to be a really interesting facility. We will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But that gives you a lay of the land, and you see the circular roadway system and how Terminal A frontage sits parallel to what's today Carson Road, for any of you familiar with that area. So there are really 4 main elements of this. It's a 33-gate terminal, and there's going to be, actually, interestingly enough, on the land side, 8 new bridges that have to be built to accommodate the roadway traffic. And to the south side here, I know this, it's not oriented to the north, but to the south side over here, you can see there were some cargo operations that needed to be relocated. We're doing over 140 acres of paving work, not only for the ramp or the gate area, the ramp for the gate area, but the additional ramp around the terminal. And finally, a consolidated rental car facility, a con rack that has public parking associated with it. And that's in this peach color area. I'm not sure what color that is, what's showing up on your screen. So an important issue for us when we talk about what this means to the region is not only do we want to give the region, the airport, and facilities that it deserves and are of the highest quality and improve that customer experience, but we also understand that these projects are economic drivers for the region. So the screen alone just tells you that we have 1.9 billion in wages and 4.9 billion in economic activity, again, as you go through that analysis. And this is just related to those 3 projects that I mentioned, mainly the terminal project. So you have a significant impact to the regional community. And what does that mean as it relates to employment and continue to move forward? It would have been really easy for the Port Authority to have deferred some of these improvements. But I give credit to our board of commissioners led by Chairman O'Toole and our executive director, Rick Houghton, and our director of aviation and chief operating officer, Huntley Lawrence, for really moving these things forward and keeping sort of the shoulder to the wheel on delivering on the expectations to be that world-class operator, world-class airports, and helping build these facilities that bring us there. The other issue as it relates to driving the region includes our partnership with the region. There's a significant effort and a great collaboration both with the city of Newark and other partners in the region to really focus our efforts on having robust, meaningful, disadvantaged businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses, as well as local businesses as part of all of these projects. And that comes from the very top of the organization. And we really look forward to helping making that happen and giving folks an opportunity to learn and to grow and to be part of this great improvements. So this picture is just where we're at. This is, you can tell, it was a little bit a little while ago, and we're not looking for any of that white stuff anytime soon. Let's hope, knock on wood, that that's gone for the rest of this season. So that's the front edge of the new Terminal A. You can see the East Pier here, and developments continuing to move forward as we go along here. This is the paving area that I talked about, in particular, some additional concrete work that's being done, and these are just some of the bridges that lead to it. So as you drive by the facility, you can see this changing almost on a daily basis. I find it so interesting. Drive by, 2 different times during a week, and you'll see that something materially has changed. And at any point in time, right now, we could have over 600 people working on that site. And at the highest point, it's probably closer to 800. So a lot of folks working there, and improvements moving along pretty quickly. So really, what is this all about? This is really to address our current needs on growth, more gates. We're talking a total of 33 gates over the 2 phases. The first phase will open by the middle of next year with 21 gates. And I'll talk about the con rack and parking there in a minute. The second phase is targeted to open by the end of next year with an additional 12 gates. So a total of 33 gates, a lot of open space. You can see the free roaming capability of folks, a lot of good check-in space, makes it much more flowing as it relates to passenger check-in and passenger processing, a much larger single TSA checkpoint with a number of lanes, significant number of lanes. We're talking in the teens to be able to facilitate that. Those of you that travel through Terminal C are familiar with that single checkpoint and the ability to flex as you need to. Right now, with 3 separate satellites, if one satellite is slower, it's kind of difficult to pick up staff, have them run to another satellite. By the time they get there, the push or rush could be slowed down a little bit. Having a single checkpoint, it's a lot easier to open and close additional lanes as traffic demands. And those of you that are TSA pre-check will have that single location for that. So you're more likely to have the continued availability of pre-check. And what's mostly important is that we're really making sure that this is themed to represent New Jersey and the region. This is your airport. This is our airport as a community. And it needs to be reflective of that. When you arrive and go through this facility, you should see aspects of New Jersey in this facility. And that's definitely what we're working towards with our partners that are part of this project. So we look forward to that and look forward to continuing to represent the region, have folks have a really positive, memorable experience and remember New Jersey as they go through the facility. State-of-the-art design. Again, we're talking about updated baggage systems, updated equipment. The idea is to really make that passenger journey much more efficient, a much greater use of technology, and really process folks a lot more efficiently. A larger, curb front to allow much greater ease of drop-offs and pickups, having separate levels for arrivals and departures. It's a great flowing facility, and the complement of having the con rack and the opportunity to have a consolidated rental car facility and parking facility right there is really opportune, making that a really efficient operation for our customers. I had mentioned the con rack. You could see again in the picture on the left, you can see the terminal in the background, and this is the con rack here in the front. So the con rack is a 6-level facility, and it's growing. More levels are being added as we go through it. 2,750 parking spaces for the public, and a pedestrian bridge to connect right into the terminal. So that will open, the first phase of that, which includes the public parking, will open at the same time as the terminal first phase, which is by mid-year of 2022, so next year. This is just a rendering of what that Conrack facility will look like, what you would see from the roadway if you're on 1 and 9. You take a look over, that's what you can anticipate to see. A really great design, and we appreciate all the partnership, the folks that are helping us with that. AirTrain, I had mentioned a total replacement of the AirTrain. This is a $2 billion project. Our AirTrain was put into service in 1996, pretty dated. It's reached its end of its useful life. It's carrying more passengers when we were in 2019 than it was ever expected or facilitated to carry. And we're looking forward to something that is a more robust system that can handle the resumption traffic levels that we're hoping to see soon, and continue that fully automated system. It will be also has to be redesigned in light of the location of the new terminal and our longer vision plan for the airport as to where facilities are going to be. So there's currently an RFQ that's out on the street and some shortlisting that's going on, and we're looking forward to keeping that project moving. And the last project I wanted to mention was just a rehabilitation of one of our 2 major runways. So we have runway 4 right, which you can see in the center picture is the top runway. This is a project that we continue to have to make sure that we have that efficiency and availability to the airfield for our airline partners, which ultimately means reliability and timeliness for our customers. It's about a $100 million project overall. We say 1 year start to finish, and that will really button things up, but the majority of the work will be done this year. This is a great time to do it, and we appreciate the partnership with our airlines and their leadership in helping support that project to get done this year when traffic, unfortunately, is a little bit lower, but it's a heck of a lot better to close a runway and do a lot of work like that for a season when we're in the situation that we're in now with a little bit decreased traffic, and make it available and ready to turnkey for the new operation. And the one thing I will mention too, is we talk about volumes. Like I said, when we started the COVID process, or COVID pandemic began, we were down over 98%. At this point in time, we've seen some light at the end of the tunnel, and I would say in the past month, we've seen the 3 highest days of post-COVID traffic operations for the entire year. So within the last several weeks, we've had our 3 busiest days. So we're looking forward to seeing that continue, and we appreciate everyone's involvement. And again, a lot of credit goes to certainly our team at the Port Authority, our leadership, and the vision that they have. As folks know, we're doing a lot to be prepared for the future, but also currently addressing the issues with COVID, being a safe, healthy operation. We have lots of things going on. I could give a whole nother presentation on all the things we're doing COVID related, but as traffic rebounds and continues to resume, we want the community to know that we will be there with newer, better facilities and a renewed focus on customer experience and customer service, and continue the safe, efficient operation that we have at Newark, and continue to grow not only on behalf of the airport and our airport partners, but on behalf of the region. So happy to answer any questions you might have a little bit later, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Jim, thank you very much. Certainly terrific to hear of the progress being made, and the aim to build those world-class facilities is certainly a great one. For all too many years, Newark Airport was not the place that people wanted to come through, and certainly is beginning to be that kind of place. So we look forward to welcoming many more visitors in the years ahead, and thank you for all that you do and your team to manage the airport there. I'll also mention a big part of NRBP's advocacy has been supporting the Port Authority's capital plan to see facilities like this being built, most recently testifying or providing comments relative to the environmental impact of the AirTrain and really the positive nature of that project. So Jim, thanks again for your leadership and being with us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chip, and thanks for your leadership and the partnership we have with the NRBP and the whole community. So thanks again.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to welcome Jeff Vasser, who's the Executive Director of the New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism, for a couple comments about the overall nature of what we can expect, or what you're looking forward to anyway, Jeff, as we enter this holiday season. And one just comment, I know we've asked our speakers, given the impossible task of providing them 10 minutes or less to do their presentations. And I apologize for the tightness, but we do have the second part of our panel discussion coming up. So with that, Jeff, apologies for kind of giving you, finding ourselves a little bit short on time. So thank you for your understanding.
Thanks, Chip. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. I will be brief, certainly by virtue of the fact that most of the meat of what's been going on has been shared by my fellow panelists. So I just wanted to just briefly give you an overview of what we're seeing at the state level and a broad overview of where we see things going for the next year. As most people have said, 2019 was a record year. No different for us. We saw 116 million visitors come into New Jersey, which was about a 6% increase over the prior year, and $46 billion in spending. Essex County, of which Newark is the primary demand generator, had 6.5 million visitors, and that was roughly a 3% increase over the prior year. And spending was about $4 billion for tourists, and that was 5% increase, which is basically the fourth highest growth rate in the state. And we attribute that in part to a tack that we took last year at the urging and challenge, if you will, of Secretary of State Tahisha Wei, whose vision was to focus more on culinary and the arts and culture and history, and basically things that Newark is known for. So by virtue of that pivot on our part, as well as the great partnership we have with Ricardo and his team at the Greater Newark CVB, we're working hand in glove to really promote the destination. Obviously, the fall came along, or I'm sorry, the spring, and we had our visitor profile study done. Fortunately, it's done in April and May, so we were able to ask them to give us a projection of what they saw the COVID impact to be on New Jersey tourism for 2020. We don't have those numbers yet, but the projection was roughly that we would be down 25% in visitation and spending from our visitors in 2020 over the prior year. Again, we don't have those final numbers yet, but we have no reason to think that it's not going to be in that ballpark. And of course, those numbers are uneven. The shore, what we saw in the summer and translating into the fall, was extremely strong. People had that pent up demand to get outside, and they were able to be outside, and they felt comfortable on the beaches, on the boardwalks. So the shore did well. And then into the fall, as people that were living in the cities in Philadelphia and New York decided to stay longer. Some people that had the benefit of having a second home on the shore, they stayed there. And in some cases, they re-enrolled their kids in those shore communities. The results for those destinations that were more inland, that were more dependent on indoor activities, business travel, meetings and conventions, they had a much tougher time, needless to say. But we see things getting better. The recovery is going to be based on people's comfort level, as was said earlier. Vaccines are going to be a big part of it. The restrictions being lifted are going to be a big part of it. And additionally, the experience that all of our indoor destinations have had over the past year under their belt of how to accommodate their visitors and in their attractions much more safely. Now, what are we going to be doing moving forward? We think New Jersey is in a much better position than many other states to come out of this quicker and stronger. And with apologies to my colleagues, Jim and Patrick, that just presented at United Airlines and at the Port Authority, we think that the drive market works to our advantage. You know, most of our visitors come in from New York and Pennsylvania and the Baltimore DC corridor. People, until feel fully comfortable, are more likely to get into a car and drive with their family or with their pod than they would be to get on an airplane. So I think that helps us, to come out of this quicker. Our marketing will be targeting the drive market. Those of you that follow the state budgets know that both the governor and his administration presented a budget that gave us a significant increase in dollars. The legislature additionally is thrilled to support that. And they have legislation in place that's going to increase our budget as well. So with that, we're looking to do a few things. One, we're going to help our destinations. Newark, the Newark Convention and Visitors Bureau has seen an increase of 25% of the grant money that we give them. And we gave a 25% increase to our grantees across the board. So we want to see those local destinations work to increase their visitation that's best for them. Again, the shore will be treating it differently than Essex County. But we wanted to make sure that they had their money from us. Website enhancements. We already were looking at $300,000 in new website upgrades. Now we're going to have some additional money that we can do some additional functionality. We can do itinerary builders. We're going to do mapping. So it's going to be one of the top websites you're going to see. More PR events we're looking to do. We're going to create a New Jersey Day at Grand Central Terminal. More media events. More fam trips, familiarization tours for those of you that don't know the term, throughout the state. So we're going to really focus on the things that we have that people don't necessarily know about and really attract media to get that PR out there. We're talking about adding staff. We've got a lot more on our plate this year, and we're going to be adding some team members that are going to help us implement that. Our advertising agency, Dana Communications, they're going to be seeing an additional amount of money that is going to expand our digital consumer marketing. We're going to be testing new markets. Even though we're talking about the drive market, we're going to see what we can do in Ohio and West Virginia. We like to say that we are a tank of gas from a third of the nation's population. So we have a lot of opportunity to drive more people here. We're going to work on a broadcast commercial. We're going to reinvigorate and re-engage the travel trade to work with us. International marketing was a big part of the 2020 project. And although we don't see the international market coming back for another year or even year and a half to 2 years, there are a lot of things we can do to get ready, whether it's translation work or getting videos that are very important for the international tour operator. We're going to do that outreach and get ready for when the international market is ready to go. We're going to do more trade shows. We're going to do more consumer shows potentially. We're going to do more research. And a lot of that is going to be done with the work of our destinations. The biggest thing we're looking to do is cooperative marketing. We're going to do cooperative advertising, where we're going to fund part of the initial cost of an ad program, and all of our destinations from around the state are going to be able to buy into it. We're going to do the same thing with research. We're going to put up funds that everybody can have the same type of research that we have at the state level that people might not necessarily be able to afford on their own. So whether it's going to be economic impact or visitor profile studies or credit card usage, those are the types of research projects we're going to help fund. And the same thing with photo libraries. A lot of people are asked by their media partners for high-res video, high-res photography, and not everybody has that opportunity to put it together. So if we can fund some projects where we can get vendors that are going to be able to offer a discounted rate to our partners by virtue of the fact that we're going to fund this, I think that's going to go a long way. So that was my race through it, Chip. The state, we're optimistic about what's going to happen in 2021. My partner, Anthony Minnick, is on the line, the director of marketing for the tourism, travel and tourism division. If I missed anything, Anthony, please throw it in, or send me an email if you're not able to speak up. But thanks for having us. Again, we're optimistic as we see visitors being more open-minded by virtue of the fact that vaccines are coming and people are feeling much better. So thanks for having us.
Jeff, thank you very much. I apologize for squeezing you a little bit on the time, but I do want to thank you for your leadership, and your division has been a tremendous partner with the CVBs, and the DMOs are certainly looking forward to a lot of the things you're talking about, the additional support that you can provide, not only from a budget perspective, but the other attributes when you talked about cooperative ventures and the picture libraries and things like that, certainly very important. So thank you very much for being such a great partner to the CVB and the work on behalf of the state throughout.
Thanks.
So with that, the discussion about focus on history, arts, and culture certainly leads right into Ricardo Salazar, who's the acting president and CEO of the Greater Newark Convention and Visitors Bureau. We welcome our panelists who are going to come on screen now and join us for a very rich discussion. We could certainly take all day to talk about the great things that these destinations, these services, and these leaders are doing for the city of Newark. So with that, Ricardo, thank you for your leadership, and take it away.
Thank you, Chip, and NRBP, your staff at NRBP. And also thank you again to James, Veronica, Pat, and Jeff for your invaluable input. You're all very important in the recovery and comeback for the city of Newark, in the recovery and the comeback of the city of Newark as we start to beat the virus and our economy finally starts to get going. I'm also very happy to introduce our next set of panelists who are just as important, but who have also been greatly impacted by the pandemic. They are the reason people visit Newark, and we're very lucky to have them. In the months ahead, they will have a very important role in our reopening and in keeping Newark top of mind. With that, I would like to introduce them. Donna Daniels, General Manager from Prudential Center, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you very much for including me. I'm really honored. I'm Donna Daniels. I'm the EVP and General Manager of Prudential Center. We're really proud of the fact that Prudential Center is a top 8 building nationally, right here in Newark. So that's pretty spectacular. I've been with HBSC for about 5 years, after spending almost 25 years at the NBA League office. My current role is operating not only the Prudential Center, but RWJ Barnabas Health Hockey House, our practice facility, as well as the Grammy Museum experience at Prudential Center across the board, event operations, guest experience, and engineering. But my primary focus over the course of the last year has just been to focus on bringing anybody who comes back to this venue safely.
Great.
So again, appreciate being on this panel.
Welcome. Jeremy for Newark Arts.
Thank you so much, Ricardo, for having me, and a tribute to NRBP for bringing this panel together. I'm Jeremy Johnson. I'm Executive Director of Newark Arts. We are an independent nonprofit. We're the umbrella, the driver that makes the arts and makes Newark a city of the arts. And a big part of what we do, as Chip mentioned earlier, is collaborating. So you'll hear more from us later about how we're collaborating with artists, driving the economy, tourism, and all the great things we have ahead. Thank you.
Welcome. Tanisha, Stephanie.
I am Tanisha Nash Laird. I am President and CEO of Newark Symphony Hall, a role I've been in for 2 years and 4 months, but who's counting? I'm pretty proud that a year ago, CBS New York did a profile on us, once great Newark Symphony Hall rising again as a destination, because it's so fitting for what we're talking about today. And it was because we had literally attracted Hollywood to Newark Symphony Hall shortly after I got there. And next week, we're going to be announcing another Hollywood partnership. My background, I've created tourism initiatives, what ultimately became an award-winning one elsewhere in the state. My background is also in economic development, and of course, in arts. I got my start in entertainment 30 years ago. So I'm really excited to be able to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you.
Kristen, Newark Museum.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here with the NRBP and all of my colleagues here. Yes, I'm Kristen Curry, Director for Institutional Giving and Special Events at the Newark Museum, the Newark Museum of Art, which is the largest art and education institution in the state of New Jersey, one of the most influential museums across the country. Our collections rank 12th in size nationally and include American, African, Asian, African-American, folk, decorative arts, and the 1885 National Historic Landmark, the Ballantine House. We offer a wealth of diverse public and school programs serving thousands across the region. In my role, I oversee corporate foundation and government fundraising, our annual art ball gala event, venue rentals at the museum, and visitor services, where I am working with my colleagues on the reopening of the museum, which is scheduled for June 3rd. So I'm excited to share more about that with everyone as we go forward in our discussion.
Great. Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Katie Sword. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communication at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. I have been at NJPAC for 9 years. I can't believe it, time flies. I am responsible for the marketing, communications, branding, and sales at NJPAC. And currently we're focusing on bringing back our audiences safely and the reopening plans for later this season. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai?
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Kai Campbell. I guess I'm the visionary behind Walla Food and Beverage Group. Just first, thanks to the everybody here, especially NRBP. I mean, in my past life, doing economic development work, I worked really closely with Chip and Barbara and Nikki and folks like Maya. So I just want to say thank you. So we have 3 restaurants here in the city of Newark, 2 of which are downtown. One is the Walla, which is just celebrated 6 years in business. The Yard, which is in Military Park. And we just opened, which was supposed to open last year and received our permits to open 2 weeks before the pandemic and never did. So we just celebrated our soft launch of that shop. And I am the new owner as of about 1.5 years ago of Bragman's Delicatessen, which is one of the oldest restaurants here in the city of Newark, one of the last remaining Jewish delis in the city. And that has been around since 1937. And, you know, I'm glad to be here, especially with my past in economic development, where, you know, like I said, I was used to wearing suits to these and getting free coffee and so now, you know, we're a big part of the partnership between Audible and World Central Kitchen, which is Newark Working Kitchen, which is the t-shirt that I'm wearing, which has basically come together a coalition of restaurants and partners in the philanthropic community, as well as some of the service providers to provide meals and in hopes of keeping the restaurant community somewhat viable and sustainable here within the city, while providing meals for those in need, as well as first responders. And I'm really happy to be here and talk about the work that we're doing here in Newark.
Thank you. Gill Sveyer? All Points West?
Hi, thanks for inviting me to participate. It's great to see so many familiar faces again. I'm Gill Speyer, a Newark resident and founder of All Points West Distillery here in Newark. I'm typically responsible, along with my head distiller, Jace, who you may see in the background, for day-to-day production operations, aged spirit warehousing, bottling, compliance, our public tasting room program, managing our team of 4 New Jersey and 1 New York brand reps, new spirit development, and most importantly, customer engagement and brand development. Early pandemic, these roles were expanded to include sanitizer production, distribution, and donations. The production of sanitizer was a temporary privilege extended to our license that helped us a lot and hopefully helped the community. Mid-pandemic, we were running an outdoor entertainment programming, which was our attempt to sort of stay relevant when our normal channels of customer engagement were blocked. And now late pandemic, I'm heading the relaunch of our public programs, planning the launch of a new rye, which is in barrels over to my left, that we developed during the pandemic and which may or may not be named PPP rye.
Thank you. Before I move on to the questions, I wanted to acknowledge, I wanted to say it before, Jeff Vasser, as the executive director at the New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism, as he stated, has supported Newark for the past few years. The contribution from the state to the CVB has been $142,000, which we use as per the approval of the state. We basically submit a proposal as to how we're going to use the funds. And obviously, our mission as the CVB is to make sure that we're highlighting Newark and what makes Newark a destination. So that has to be in sync as to how we spend our budget that we get, the grant that we get from the state. Thankfully, as he pointed out, that budget was increased last year to 25%. So it went from 142,000 to 175,000. And we're very, very grateful. We want to assure the state that we're using this money responsibly. One of the big projects that we have in place that we should begin soon is the creation of a new destination video for Newark. And we asked the mayor Ross Baraka, to be part of this video, and he gladly accepted. And we feel that the product is going to be top notch. We hired the services of a New York City company. We did vet local vendors, but the Palette Group, who eventually won the contract, very, very good, very creative, very, very talented group. They have worked with Visit Philly, and we selected them because based on the quality of their work and also the willingness to work with us from a financial standpoint as well. It also, to mirror what Jeff said, we're focusing on the drivable market. So that's where our marketing efforts are going, because obviously people aren't flying now, and we didn't expect them to for quite some time. But another thing that I wanted to point out, and maybe have Veronica give us a little more input on this, is an article that came out recently in regards to hotel occupancy skyrocketing in the last couple of weeks. Tourists are finally starting to take a bite of the Big Apple again. That's what it said. It was a recent New York Post article, and where hotel occupancy actually hit 47%. And that's the highest weekly average for the city since last June, according to STR. So Barbara, can you expand on that before I ask our panelists their questions? Veronica, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Ricardo. Thank you. The pandemic really drove STR to look at our data very differently. So rather than just keep comparing year over year, we are looking week by week. And yes, we have seen increases in weekly occupancy across most markets across the US. So it's not just limited to the major markets. That's exciting. That is really speaking to the traveling public's willingness to travel, that some business is picking up, but it is predominantly leisure travel right now. As I'd mentioned earlier, right? It's going to be leisure, it will be drive market, it'll be to places where people want to be. It'll be, to date, in the lower classes of hotels, lower tiered hotels, economy, mid-scale, upper mid-scale, right? These are in places where the traveling public their needs are being met. They're going to be on interstates. They're going to be in locales where they want to be, whether it's on the beach location, the mountains, things like that. And you saw evidence of it. But week by week, and yes, this week's performance that was published just last night was greater than the week before, which was the greatest we had seen since the pandemic hit. So it is encouraging. Thank you, Ricardo.
Yeah, that is music to our ears, because obviously, we being right next to New York City. Obviously, people are looking for affordable hotels, and obviously that also drives the economy here locally and has the potential to help our businesses, provided we're marketing, we're letting them know that we're here and that we're open and we're welcoming. So yeah, I wanted to get your feedback on that because obviously, we're in the shadows of Manhattan, and I think that their good news is great news for us as well. So I wanted to ask Donna a question. The state of New Jersey recently announced that a small number of fans can return to indoor facilities like the potential center for sporting events like Devil Games. What steps are you taking so that patrons concerned about COVID feel safe as those numbers increasingly start to increase in the weeks and months ahead?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my sole responsibility over the course of the last year is just all about welcoming anybody who comes into Prudential Center back safely. I think if I had a nickel for every time I said safety first, I would probably not be on this call and maybe on a United flight somewhere, but we've all been taking this very seriously, and as we welcome fans and everybody back. We were happy to welcome 10% of our fans back at the beginning of March. And if you have come to Prudential Center for a game, you've experienced social distancing, you've experienced hand sanitizers, you've experienced quite frankly, a transition and a reimagining of how our entire facility has been as operating. There are mobile ordering opportunities and cashless payment opportunities that quite frankly, we didn't have a year or so ago. So I always look at challenges, and as we all know, this has been a huge challenge. But for us, keeping people safe first and foremost, but we're using this as an opportunity to reimagine how Prudential Center is operating, and our guests will ultimately have a better experience for it. So we're really proud of that, and the surveys to date, because we want to know how we're doing. The surveys to date are really encouraging in terms of how safe our guests feel, but also how much they're enjoying kind of the new experience and the additional kind of guest amenities, quite frankly, that we have for people who are coming to Prudential Center.
Great, thank you. This question is for Jeremy. The city of Newark, led by the mayor, has been vocal in support of the local arts community during the pandemic, as vital to the city's future. With the deadline fast approaching for individual artists, artist collectives, and organizations to apply for grants from the city's Creative Catalyst Fund, do you think people are aware of the fund? Has it helped? And are they getting the grant in?
Thank you, Ricardo, for that question. Thank you so much. First, I want to say it's so great to hear the music to our ears that local travel the drive market is going to support all of our institutions here. And to your question, Ricardo, local artists, the public art programs that are happening here, the historic work that we're seeing excitingly at Newark Symphony Hall, throughout downtown and our neighborhoods, yes, artists are taking advantage of new grants. And let me be clear, the mayor has been a key advocate so that our local arts community can be stronger. And let me remind everyone, when we pitched Newark for the Amazon Award, or when we were on the cover of the United Hemispheres magazine with the Newark Public Library, we used and we promoted local arts, local businesses, our local restaurants. So I'm very excited to say we have close to $1.3 million in grant opportunities are on the ground in Newark for local artists, for programs ranging from the Creative Catalyst Fund. Thank you, Newark City of Newark Mayor and our Arts Council and our City Council. We have LaMonica, McIver. Thank you for that. That's putting $800,000 on the street for COVID impacted artists. My organization, Newark Arts, we ourselves are putting $100,000 on the street to help individual artists. There's additional dollars for the Harriet Tubman statue that will be in Washington Square now, which will be known as Tubman Square. That's going to be a tourist attraction right across from the Newark Museum. So I could go on, but let me tell you all, individual artists, performing artists, visual artists are part of this excitement coming back, and folks are already starting. We're already seeing walking tours of public arts already. If you look at the Four Corners Public Arts Program in the downtown area. I could go on, but let me pause for some others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Katie, this question is for you. While NJPAC has several indoor venues that have been closed due to the pandemic, you also have an outdoor plaza, the site of many great events and performances over the years, like Sounds of the City. Do you see more outdoor events in the months ahead as we wait for additional guidance or when more people can gather indoors?
Thank you, Ricardo. So we're currently evaluating Sounds of the City. As you know, last year we did it virtually and we did 8 DJ nights with local and renowned DJs. But as I said, we're evaluating right now what we're going to do as safety for our patrons, as everyone is saying, as our #1 priority. We hope to do Sounds of the City in person, but safety guidelines need to align with the city, the state, and the CDC. And we're in that planning right now, so we should know more in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So we don't have an answer yet, but we're hopeful.
Great. Thank you. Tanisha, performers are desperate to return to the stage. You're already leading an incredible renovation of the historic Symphony Hall. How has the pandemic impacted your fundraising efforts and your ability to move efforts forward and welcome performers and audiences back to Symphony Hall?
Thank you so much for that question. Well, as many of you know, Symphony Hall is 95 years old. We actually turned 96 this fall. And yes, we are planning a renovation of our historic hall with the idea of it being completed by our 100th anniversary. What's interesting about this is that we, like everybody else, pivoted. And again, like everybody else, I'm going to thank the mayor for being part of a major effort that we did with a deaf poetry reunion that initially was done. We were going to be planning to do in the facility for a fundraiser for us, but we shifted and made it a fundraiser for our Embrace Newark initiative. And what that showed me is that we could really get people to be behind Newark Symphony Hall. We had national and international attention because we had some celebrities that were involved. And how this is affecting us is that we're really leaning into that Newark aspect of Newark Symphony Hall. Newark has produced incredible talent over the decades, and we're tapping into that talent. I'm really excited that we have people like Dionne Warwick, who's all over Twitter now, who has, it's not an official announcement, but has joined our Friends initiative. And I know that that is definitely going to assist us. As I mentioned and alluded to earlier, we are going to announce a partnership next week with a theater in Hollywood. And it's really to support our local artists. And so I think in that perspective, giving our local performers an ability to continue to perform virtually, but with some household names, will prime the pump a little bit so that they're ready to do it in real life when we're able to. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Gill, your whiskey had received international payment 2019. I believe that competition took place in San Francisco. I believe you told me. You were anticipating big things in 2020. I understand you recently reopened your tasting room at the distillery. How has the pandemic impacted your business model? And what are your plans for 2021 and beyond?
Well, I mean, we have a nice situation in that a lot of what we do here is we produce spirits for aging in barrels. So when we had the funds, whether it be the EIDL or the PPP, we were able to utilize that to build our aged spirits inventory. So our inventory stock has gotten older, the quality has improved, and we're in a better position in terms of how we can position our products competitively. So I think we're really looking forward to the rest of 2021. But the biggest impact for us had to do with, we're in a fairly expensive and fairly saturated media market. And the way that we engage customers is directly. It's face-to-face, it's liquid to lips. So when we can do tasting events, when we can do in-person events, that's really how we drive interest in what we're doing here. And our inability to do that really constrained sales. So while alcohol sales were strong through the pandemic, my distillery, like many other craft distilleries, really suffered because the way we get consumer awareness of our products didn't exist at all. And we really planned to restart that, and we have. So we have 4 people doing tastings out and about the state every weekend now, as well as the tour program. And we really need the drive market. We need to get people in. And I can be proud to say that last weekend, more than half the people in the distillery were from New York. I mean, we're getting people who are getting in their car and driving to come here, which I view, as a kind of success in our outreach efforts.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Kai, you sort of touched on this already, and so you stole my question, but I'll try to rephrase it maybe a little bit. Maybe you can expand more, but the restaurant, as we know, the restaurant industry was hit very hard by COVID. And you were in the process of opening the yard in Military Park as the pandemic hit. How are you dealing with the challenges, and do you anticipate to open it? How fast do you anticipate its opening?
So we have softly launched the restaurant, the yard. We have chosen not to plan for indoor dining or anticipate indoor dining until maybe the end of the third, maybe the fourth quarter at the earliest. For us, I mean, we've made that decision based on the science and the statistics within our community to protect, one, our workers, our employees, our staff, and their families, and to not encourage, I guess, some type of behavior that we think could negatively impact the community here. As you know, I'm sure the data suggests and has proven that our community is lagging behind the rest of the country and other more affluent communities in terms of our vaccination rates. So we've made that that choice. But the good thing about the yard is that we probably have the largest outdoor dining space in the entire city. Military Park is our background. But our confines, we probably have about 5,000 square feet of outdoor dining space, which we have branded the backyard. We're the yard, that's the backyard. Next month, we'll see the launch. We're calling it our Momentum Week, where we're planning a jazz brunch, a night market, and some other activities to basically follow through with the catalyst that we partnered with other folks like the mayor's wife, Linda Baraka, and we did the Newark Winter Village. That actually was a tremendous help for us, and we were able to get a lot of metrics and data from that event. Depending on the metrics that we use, I saw about a 400 to 1,000% increase in business month over month. So what that tells me is that people really want to do something that they feel confident and safe in terms of the perception, and something that's a little bit different. Because of, like all the other panelists, right? The pack is dark. The rock is somewhat lit, and Symphony Hall is dark. So that, for me, I'm like these guys are the large sharks and whales. I'm just trying to be a tiny fish and trying to feed off of some of their momentum or stuff that's left. No pun intended. I don't mean to disrespect our clientele and our customers, but we feed and we are sustainable on the chum, right? The stuff that we want to be the little guy. We're a small business. We really need that to be sustainable. So you'll see over the next month or two, because we have, fortunately within the Walla and the yard, we have outdoor space where we can safely and comfortably seat a lot of people and a lot of patrons. And we can do that in a way that is one, we can derive a lot of data, and we can, provide a lot of confidence and safety for our customers. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but we are open. We will not open for indoor dining anytime soon. So what we've done is we've basically taken pods for people that want some level of privacy, but we'll be able to clean and sanitize those pods very, very effectively and efficiently. And then we'll have outdoor space, which will also be socially distanced, but we'll also be able to trace and track people, which is also a good business idea for us because we want the ability for customer engagement. We're super hyper local, to double down on the adjectives there, but we feel like in this market, with limited customer opportunity and limited engagement opportunity, we're going to be that much more adamant about our customer service experience.
Thank you. Yeah, and two things. One is surely the pandemic has forced people to be creative. The other thing is the Mayor's Wife event that again, it forces people to be creative, and I believe that was a great program which we supported. And I think that as we move forward, a lot of the things that have been done during the pandemic are things that will be a mainstay moving forward. Next question is for Kristen. The Newark Museum has been very active throughout the pandemic, presenting virtual opportunities for patrons to engage while your facilities were closed. Do you foresee your virtual menu adding to a more hybrid experience going forward, once a greater number of people can once again gather indoors?
That's a good question. That's a question we've been discussing ad nauseum within the museum. Yes, the museum, we closed on March 14th, and we very quickly pivoted, the word of the day, to doing virtual programming, which is we couch under Newark Museum at Home. And it's a wide range of programs from all day community days to tours to lectures to art making programs. We have a virtual escape room, and it's been tremendously successful. In 2020, we implemented almost 200 virtual programs, and we had a little more than 250,000 participants across all of our channels, throughout this region, from throughout the country, and even internationally. So our virtual programs have been tremendously successful. And as we look to reopen on June 3rd, initially, we will continue, while the museum will be open, we will continue with our virtual programming. So we won't necessarily have on-site programming outside of, I believe we're planning some outdoor programs possibly this summer in our garden, but internally in the museum, galleries will be open and such, but we won't have on-site programs, but we will continue with our virtual programming. As we move forward beyond 2021, when more visitors return to the museum, we are considering and looking at how do we balance the on-site programming with continuing the virtual programming in some way, shape, or form, because it's been so successful. And in fact, that's driving somewhatly some of our hiring. We're in the process of hiring, I believe it's a program producer, a position that didn't exist at the museum before, but because of the success of our virtual programs, this is a position we need and that we're going to need, for the foreseeable future, because that in some way, shape, or form, that virtual programming will continue, and we will most likely end up with some sort of hybrid, both on-site and virtual programming.
A lot of it will be staying as the new normal, as they say, right?
Right, exactly.
Since you were the last one of the first question that I asked, you'll be the first one. So I'm going to come back to you again. As you know, and specifically because we're all affected, our funding has been affected, right? So pardon me if this is too of a intrusive question, but as we all know, online retailers have not been as negatively affected as bricks and mortar businesses during the pandemic. Are you still working with Amazon Smile Foundation, and have donations increased during the pandemic since they've been doing so well? Did you lose me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Is that question for me?
Yeah, that question was for you.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat it for me just real quick?
Sure. As I said before, online retailers have not been have not done as bad as bricks and mortar businesses, right? Mm-hmm. So are you still working with Amazon Smile Foundation, and have donations increased during the pandemic?
Oh, yes, yes. We do receive donations from Amazon Smiles. Whether or not they've increased, that's not exactly in my department, but I do know we have received them in the past. And I think there's been a steady influx of them into the museum. Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's something, actually, the Amazon Smiles program is something that I know in our individual giving department that we've sought to sort of highlight and increase visibility of that, so that our members and our supporters know that they can support the museum through their own shopping efforts through that vehicle. So yes, that's something we will most likely continue to push, to help the museum's resources.
Great. Gill, this question is for you. With collaboration not being crucial and the intent of combining resources and offerings, do you see more future partnerships with other businesses? For example, we noticed you partner a lot with the Ironbound Hard Cider in the past to promote All Points West and Ironbound Hard Cider. Is this something that you see continuing or maybe increasing the number of partnerships that you have with other businesses?
Well, I mean, our primary partners are retailers. So these are both the on-premise and the off-premise ABC license holders. And we do partnership with them in terms of promoting our spirits. With our type of product, we need hand selling. So we need people who are committed to moving our product at their locations, or it just languishes. So yeah, we're into that type of partnership. We found a number of difficulties with the competing restrictions of different ABC licenses. So for example, our partnership with Ironbound is limited because we can't serve their product in our facility, they can't serve our product at their facility. There's nothing that allows cross sales of New Jersey craft products across the different craft license holders, which really limits us compared to New York. So we've been working with the Guild here to try to get more parity, parity with Pennsylvania, parity with New York, with the type of things that we could do. And I hope we can. And of course, I love partnering with all of you who are involved in Newark. I mean, there's only a few faces here that haven't been in the facility. And I'm looking for opportunities to do that, especially with regards to the larger venues in town. So yeah, but nothing specific.
Great, thank you. Donna, with the Grand Museum experience being your smaller venue to the pavilion and the main arena, are you planning to start using it for smaller events where you can still practice social distancing? We saw that initially it was used during the Grammy Museums, the ones in California. They seem to have been very active.
Yeah, our facility, quite frankly, is open, whether it's the GMEPC or the RWJ Barnabas Health Hockey House or Prudential Center, for that matter, as it relates to people coming in and practicing what we put in place in terms of the protocols. If there was an opportunity to bring a group into the GMEPC, that would be amazing. We have done productions out of that facility over the course of the last 6 months or so, which has been awesome. But I also look to the RWJ Barnabas Health Hockey House. I mean, that facility's been open since the first week of August, which has been amazing. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've had 13,000 youth hockey participants in that facility, skating safely. There's nothing better, quite frankly, than leaving my office and walking across the catwalk at that facility and seeing little girls and boys skating safely, and a lot of times with masks on, but to see that happen has been amazing. So I look forward to, we're not quite there yet on the Grammy Museum experience, but we're hopeful to get there sooner than later. But similarly to what Kristen talked about, we have a ton of versatile programming coming out of the GMEPC. And when we do open, it is our programming and how our guests experience that museum will be transformed, quite frankly. Again, challenges that have turned into opportunities.
Great. Thank you. Tanisha, one of your strengths pre-pandemic was your community programs. I would always get all the e-blasts, all the events that you were hosting. Do you hear from them, and what are they telling you?
Do we hear from the community?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny, we get a lot of DMs, and it's great to hear from them, and especially the artists who, just to explain the Embrace Newark initiative, not only did we supply the city with 9,095 masks that were in storage since 9/11, but we also fed people. We distributed thousands of meals, initially just for our Children's Performing Arts Academy families, but then essentially anybody that came up and said that they needed food, we gave it to them. But in addition to that, we created something called Symphony of Survival, which was helmed by Jasmine Mans as our creative director. And we had a group of 10 artists that came together, and we literally put that archive in the windows on the first floor of Symphony Hall. And the message that we got from the community was how excited that they were that we were able to give a platform of our physical building while we're closed to those artists. And they're multidisciplinary artists, they're spoken word artists, photographers, a painter, and mostly what we've heard from them was thank you.
Wow, that's great to hear. That's great. Katie, you have a robust educational program. I believe an average of 70,000 students per season during normal years. How do you see restarting the program once you have open? And is a limited number of students practicing social distance an option for you or even the schools?
Yeah, so what's been great during this pivotal time is that with us going virtually, we've been able to extend our reach, and we've gone national. We've had students from across the world and across the United States, and we've been hearing a lot from students, thanking us because some of these kids are in small areas where arts are not, they don't have these programs. So we've been able to reach students who would in normal times not be able to take these programs. So that's been really, really interesting and exciting for us. Looking ahead, for Summer for Arts Education, we are planning on being virtual. And then in the fall, we're hoping to be in person. So again, it all depends on the guidelines and what is allowed, but we are watching and planning accordingly. And are excited to provide our programs to students in the schools, out of the schools, et cetera. So yeah, so we are still moving forward in how we've done stuff. We have the same number of programs, maybe more, I think now. Yeah, so we're excited.
Well, my daughter's a part of the program, so I'm excited to hear that.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Kai, and again, you addressed this when you introduced yourself, but we see that you are part of the Audible's Newark Working Kitchens program, which has been, on the surface, been extremely successful, getting a lot of media coverage. However, there some sense of some restaurants were unhappy because they were not included. Can you shed some light into it? I mean, I know that you're working closely with them, and we commend Audible for what they've done. But was the program executed as to that it benefit everybody?
Okay, so one, I'm a participant. I'm not the coordinator of the program, and the good folks at Audible and World Central Kitchen could possibly elaborate more on that. But I can talk to you about how the impetus behind it. So Audible has been an extremely good partner, and I'm sure everybody else in the call is aware of the efforts that Audible as a company has basically as a policy and with their actions have tried to assist with the resurgence of Newark as an entire city, not just the downtown area. I know their campus is there. A lot of their foothold is in the downtown community, but they have been extremely active throughout the entire city, implementing the Live Where You Work program, where they've incentivized people by providing them with basically rental stipends to live in Newark. Again, my development hat, this is something that we encouraged 15, 20 years ago, right? So we had a goal of building 10,000 new units in the downtown area over 10 years. It's been about 15 years, and we're not even at we're barely over a couple thousand, right? So what Audible has done from the restaurant perspective is they had a program called Lunch Out Wednesdays, right? So they would basically give their employee on their team members $15 to spend at local restaurants that were within walking distance, because that made the most sense, right? So if people, decided to leave the Audible ecosystem where they actually provide free lunch as a benefit to their employees, but encourage them to go outside of that and to spend that money within the local ecosystem, right? So along Halsey Street, on Market, I'm sure Broad Street, Central Avenue, that entire Halsey neighborhood, in that downtown neighborhood, we would see an influx of Audible team members coming every Wednesday throughout the entire day, either for dinner or for lunch, to take stuff home. It was tremendous. It was was it tens of millions of dollars? No, but it was great to see that energy and to see those people come in to be introduced to our products. They've also, a lot of folks like Emily Manns, who did walking tours. She still does tours on behalf of Audible, so that when new employees come on board, they're given tours of the neighborhood. They stop in the businesses. We engage them. Sometimes we give them a lassi or let them taste our samosas or something like that. But so that was the general impetus. So we took those restaurants that were part of that program and said, hey, last year we closed the Walla more than a year ago. As soon as the pandemic hit, we had vulnerable staff. We closed almost immediately. They called me in April and said, well, is this something that you could do, right? We already have a fiduciary relationship with you. So it would be, easier to implement because we have that relationship. Could you do it? So one of the things that they asked me though is, besides could we do it, is who else do you think could do it, right? So I, at one time, probably knew all of the businesses in Newark. I said, well, here's a bunch of people. Some people chose to do it. Some people didn't choose to do it. Even people that were already partners with Audible for their Lunch Out Wednesday program, right? So unfortunately, as we all know on this call, philanthropic giving is not at an all-time high, right? Everybody was in need. Everybody is in need. And so you had to be able to, get the best bang for your buck. And so in terms of implementation, their staff, the entire Audible team, they tried to do as much as they could with limited resources. And I know this is I'm just trying to give you background color on how that.
No, we understand. We know that Audible is trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, sometimes, it's, things get in the way, but,
how it came about. I know that they could not go to everybody.
Right.
But what we're trying to do now, why I'm always trying to rep for Newark Working Kitchens, is if we get people to give more to that program, we can do a lot more, right? New restaurants are coming on board in all parts of the city, not just the downtown. There's representation throughout the entire city in every ward now, and we're trying to increase that, but we have to raise more money. So one of the things that we're trying to do, you asked me about the yard, we're trying to think creatively. Like, so for instance, if you come in and you reserve a pod, let's just say that revenue from that pod goes back to the Newark Working Kitchens, or I'll match that with some type of giving on our own. So we just have to think a lot more creatively. And we've been doing that. We've had focus groups. Hopefully we'll be able to announce something soon where we're trying to generate more revenue to make the program much more sustainable and to grow it so that we can bring on more people.
Thank you, Kai. It's very, very, very insightful. One last question, Jeremy. Thank you. If you can give us a quick status on your interactive mural map program that you're bringing to Newark before we hand it off to Barbara for her closing remarks.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. We are planning an interactive map project where folks can go around the city and take in public art and using Google Maps, work through a partnership with GNCVB. I didn't know we were going to announce it today, but since you brought it up, we're excited about that. We're excited about, there are 5,000 full-time equivalent artists in Newark. according to Americans for the Arts, generating $178 million a year pre-COVID. So our investment in the arts, paying artists to do murals, partnering with Fortune 500 companies to do more public art, and we are doing that through the Four Corners Public Arts Program, partnerships of that nature. There's just so much opportunity to work with travel and tourism, to work with local restaurants like Kai spoke about. Some of the restaurants themselves are artist destinations. If you go to coffee shops, Cuban shops that are around downtown, they have ongoing rotating art exhibits. So we're looking forward to getting that reignited as we move out of this pandemic. So look for more folks. You know, our Newark Arts Festival in the fall brings 15,000 people, and it works with about 1,500 artists. Now we are going to have a hybrid version of that in October. So it's really about pulling people away from these screens, our phones, and getting us outside, some vitamin D, safe spaces, working outdoor spaces in and around, whether it's Newark Symphony Hall, the Newark Museum of Art, NJPAC, our galleries. Please visit Aquaba Gallery in the West Ward, our only Black-owned gallery in the city. They need our help. Let's procure, drive traffic. So let's keep it going, Ricardo.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we want to thank everyone for answering these questions. We look forward to working with everyone. As I said before, we're working on this new destination video. We may call upon you to maybe have some access to your venues as we move forward. It's still in the early stages. We should start at the beginning of April. Yeah, we'll be in touch for sure. Barbara?
Thank you so much, Ricardo. Everyone on the panel did a fantastic job. Ricardo, you really led a great conversation. Thanks to all of the speakers who shared with us so much information, to our audience for staying with us a little bit longer than what we had planned. But I hope you've all felt that this was worthwhile to spend your time. Thanks to Chip for putting together a terrific program, to Maya for always being there and being our communications director and helping to make everything go smoothly. So we're grateful for all of that. Check NRBP's website, newarkrbp.org, for announcements about upcoming programs. And thanks again to Ricardo and the CVB for all that they do on behalf of the tourism in Newark, and to all of you for all the work that you're doing. I know that I speak for everyone when I say that I can't wait to be back to entertainment, arts, restaurants, being able to go out. So with that, I wish you all a good day, and thank you again for joining us at NRBP.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
You too.